Do you really have cancer? You lost half of your breast after the surgery, but you're not getting better at all. You know what they say, sickness starts with the mind.
My husband then filled a bowl full of cold water in the middle of winter, and the next thing I knew, he was dumping that cold water at me with great force. When I was stunned by what had just happened,
You better quit it with that look before I come back, and you better fix that cancer with your guts. Understand?
he yelled at me and went off to work. I still remember the look on my husband's pale face the next time I saw him. My name is Michaela. I'm 50 years old and a housewife. I have a family of 3. My husband William, who I went to college with, and our only daughter Beth, who has already left home. 2 months ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I've been noticing some discomfort in my body for a little while now. I kept telling myself, I'll go to the hospital tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and next week. I've been putting my body on the back burner, and this is the result. The cancer was more advanced than I had imagined, and the doctor diagnosed me the lowest stage. But I wasn't too surprised. Maybe I was prepared for it, because this is not the first time I have been diagnosed with cancer. In fact, I had experienced breast cancer 10 years ago. Back then, my husband was working harder than he is now, and our daughter was in junior high school. I was also working part-time, and our ordinary life was changed by my illness.
Cancer? What are you going to do about the housework? Beth is still in middle school.
When I told my husband I had cancer, the first thing he said to me was this. He's always talking about himself. My husband William was a workaholic and didn't want to burden himself with family matters rather than my illness. At the time, it was still in its early stages and I was only in the hospital for a month or so. They explained that since there were no other metastases, my breast could be preserved. When I explained this to my husband, he said,
Why don't you take the plunge and get rid of your breasts? It's not like you need them.
I was hurt that he said those terrible words with a straight face. I was only 40 years old at the time, and removing my breasts was a difficult decision for a woman to make. I chose to ignore my husband's words and preserve my breasts. While I was in the hospital, my mother-in-law Lauren helped me with the house. But that too was something my husband forced her to do, so she did it reluctantly. While I was in the hospital, I received daily calls from my daughter on my phone saying, Mom, come home soon. Grandma is so mean to me, I can't take it. My mother-in-law is a serious old-fashioned person, and she yelled at my daughter when she was seen walking down the street with a man when she didn't know. When I checked with my daughter later, she said she was just returning home with some of her classmates after club activities. But Lauren was the kind of person who would get angry over such a trivial matter. I felt sick when I heard that she had even mentioned the color of my daughter's underwear after seeing her laundry. When I contacted my mother-in-law directly about this, she said, Who do you think you owe to be in the hospital? You think you're so important. She snapped at me. I tried to talk to my husband about it, but he just said,
I don't care.
My husband's company has many company events, and the employees are close with each other and their families. Even the president and his wife, the managing director, came to visit me in the hospital, but my husband never showed up. Divorce had often crossed my mind, but I was worried about whether I would be able to get custody of my child, as I had little financial security, and my parents had already passed away, so I had few people I could rely on. The most important reason was that if something happened to me, I would know what would happen to my daughter. 10 years have passed since then. I have been in good health with no recurrence of cancer and no major illnesses. Beth, my daughter, graduated from college and moved out to live on her own. She is struggling with a job she is not used to, but seems to be enjoying it. A few years ago, I quit my part-time job and became a stay-at-home mom. No, it was more correct to say that I had to quit. My parents-in-law's house was within walking distance from my house. My father-in-law died of illness a few years ago, and I was left to take care of him mostly by myself. My mother-in-law, who had also had a hard time taking care of her parents, forced me to take care of my father-in-law as if it was a matter of course, saying that this was my job. My mother-in-law said she didn't want to take care of my father-in-law and she didn't want to be involved in that kind of work. Sometimes she called me in the middle of the night and asked me to come immediately. Lauren, I'm not a caregiver professional. Please, let me rest at night. I feel bad for your husband. I complained to my mother-in-law once like this. Then she brought up an incident in the past when I was in the hospital. Do you not intend to pay me back from back then? She was very sarcastic. My husband had a sister, Heather, who was also very vicious. I am a married woman, so I have nothing to do with that family anymore. So she won't care for her father. But when my father-in-law passed away, she said, I would like to talk about my inheritance with my mother and brother, so Michaela, you have nothing to do with this, so can you please leave the room? How could she say such a thing without hesitation, without a word of thanks to me who had cared for her father for so many years? My father-in-law was a very kind man, and I felt sorry for him and his family. Just as I was getting ready to ask my husband for a divorce, my mother-in-law developed dementia. It was even harder to care for her than caring for my father-in-law. Hey, give me my money back. I was repeatedly accused of things I never did. Of course, my mother-in-law was wrong, and I never stole a penny. My mother-in-law's dementia only got worse and worse, and there was one time I spoke to a neighbor. You know, this is hard to say. It's about your mother-in-law. She came to the wake the other day, but... According to her, the money in the envelope she received from my mother-in-law only included $2. I asked my husband to ask my mother-in-law about this, and he said,
That can't be true. The people in the house stole it.
He wouldn't even listen to him, and my husband, exasperated, yelled at her to do whatever she wanted, and his anger was also directed at me.
You quit your job and became a housewife, so you better take care of my mom properly.
He yelled at me. This made me so angry that I snapped back. Excuse me? Cut the crap. Do you think I quit my job because I wanted to? Of course not. You're always working, but isn't she your parent? You should be the only one taking care of her. Don't blame me for any of this. My normally mild-mannered husband became impatient as I raised my voice in anger.
Don't suddenly raise your voice. I'll try to help out more, so... Well, I'm sorry.
But his apology was only temporary. He took time off work to accompany my mother-in-law to the hospital a few times. But he couldn't take that many days off, so he went back to his old self and things went right back to the way they were. I had noticed some discomfort in my body at that time, but with my mother-in-law to take care of, my trips to the hospital became more and more distant. By the time I went to the hospital because I was feeling so ill, the cancer had already taken over my body. This time it had metastasized, and I chose to have one of my breasts removed. The reflection in the mirror made me feel like I was no longer a woman. I cried many times. But when I was discharged from the hospital, my husband's words to me were, in a sense, what I had expected. I was to stay at home until the next treatment, and the doctor told me to rest.
Still, you could at least take care of Mom. If they took your breasts out, you must be cured by now.
The day after I was discharged from the hospital, my husband says such things to me with a sigh as I lay in bed. I can't do it, no matter what you say. Besides, the cancer isn't cured and I'm still sick. I can't deal with your mother. You do it. My wounds are so sore that it hurts to even lift my hand. My mother-in-law gets emotional, throws things, and is not the kind of person a sick person should be dealing with. My husband, who took care of my mother-in-law while I was in the hospital, must have noticed how difficult it was for me. And yet he still forces me to live the same life as before while I'm in the middle of treatment. What a horrible person he is.
Anyway, I'm going to work now, and you can handle the rest.
My husband said that and tried to leave the house. Cut the crap! I shouted loudly, and he turned around and approached me.
Do you really have cancer? You lost half of your breast after the surgery, but you're not getting better at all. You know what they say, sickness starts with the mind. Then he filled a
bowl full of water in the kitchen and dumped it right on me. The coldness of the water and my husband made me shiver. I guess he was under a lot of stress dealing with his mother.
You better quit it with that look before I come back. And you better fix that cancer with your guts. Understand?
He said that and left for work. Guts? Is he stupid? I want to wipe my wet body and change my clothes right away, but I can't move as much as I want, and my wound hurts. I called my husband right away, but he was either ignoring me or not answering, so I called someone. An hour or so later, my husband came home with a panicked look on his face.
The president asked me, "Why are you here, Mrs. Director?"
My husband was very upset, and even though it was the middle of winter, his face was sweating profusely. Michaela called me. She wants you to get in touch with her. What's the meaning of this? You're taking some time off to deal with Michaela, aren't you? My husband had a cup in his hand with the logo of a nearby coffee shop on it. He lied to me about his work so he could enjoy his time alone.
No, that's...
To my husband, who did not know how to respond, I hate people who can't take care of their families. Do you think someone who can't even take care of his family can take care of a customer who is a complete stranger? Michaela has been asking me for advice for a long time. We are similar in age and we are very close. My husband looks at me as if he's never heard of such a thing before. June, the managing director, and I are only 1 year apart in age, and we both have a daughter, so we have become friends. When I got the call and rushed over to visit her, I was surprised. The front door was unlocked and Michaela was soaking wet. When Michaela told me her story, all I could feel was resentment. I told her that she should leave you. I heard my husband's voice so small and muffled that I couldn't hear him, not to mention struggling with the words of the executive director. I almost laughed at the thought that my husband, who is often overbearing to me, is such a weak-willed person at the office. The managing director glared at him and said, "Well, I just came to talk to you about work and I'll be on my way. You have about 10 years left until retirement, but we don't have a seniority system. We assign positions based on an employee's personality and enthusiasm for the job, so you won't be getting promotions anytime soon. On the contrary, you may get demoted. You understand what I mean, don't you?" My husband's face grew paler and paler as he listened to the executive director's words. In fact, the current president of the company my husband works for is his son-in-law, and the actual management of the company is the daughter of the president of the entire company. Since the managing director is in charge of the company, my husband's career at this company will surely be cut short in the future, according to the managing director. My husband collapsed to his knees. "You can decide whether or not you want to stay with the company," June, the managing director, said to me. "Michaela, let's have dinner again when you get well." I smiled and told her, of course. When June left our house, my husband said,
"Why did you call her out of all people? Are you trying to harass me?"
"Huh? Why else would I call her? It's your fault you didn't pick up the phone." My husband looked frustrated, as if he couldn't say anything back to me.
Hey, you're good friends with the managing director, aren't you? I want you to talk to the managing director and tell her that this whole thing was a misunderstanding. Without my income, you'd be in trouble too." He
looked at me with eyes like he was hanging on for dear life. I just silently looked down at my pathetic husband.
"I know. Let's leave Mom to my sister. We took care of everything when Dad was still around. Then she should take care of Mom this time. Then you can start a new second life with me."
I broke away and laughed. "I wanted to tell you something when I got out of the hospital." My husband's eyes lit up at my words.
"Tell me anything,"
he replied so happily, and I said to him, "Please, divorce me." I looked my husband straight in the eye and said coldly, "Did you think I was going to beg you for something?" Hearing the word divorce, my husband widened his eyes.
"Why?"
is all he could say from the shock. "Did you think I didn't know what was going on? I heard that you called Beth the first day I was admitted to the hospital and tried to get her to take time off work to take care of you and your mother. Don't you dare make fun of me. When I got the call from my daughter, I was gutted. This idiot husband was going to make our daughter take time off of work to take care of his mother. My daughter obeyed my advice to ignore him, and when she didn't respond, my husband gave up and was left to deal with his mother. I had resigned myself to the fact that this was my destiny in life, but I still don't want to live like this. How could someone who treats even his own parents like an obstacle in his life be so nice to me, a stranger? I don't want you in my life from now on. Get out of my sight right now. My husband must have been widely irritated by my nonchalant tone.
What can you do without me? You are sick and unemployed.
My husband yelled at me. Don't worry, I'm here. Out of the corner of my eye, my daughter Beth was standing there. I'm the one who called her.
Hey, shouldn't you be at work? Working people can't take time off work easily.
Beth ignored my husband's words and immediately went over to me. Mom, I'm sorry I'm late. I've got a cab waiting for us. Let's go. She quickly and lightly packed my luggage and was about to leave the house.
Beth, you've always been so selfish. I sent you to college, you ungrateful bastard.
My husband was furious. What? You sent me to college? You told me not to go to college, so I took out a loan and worked so that I can go. Your memories are falling out along with your thinning hair. Beth giggled as she looked at the top of my husband's slightly thinning head. I couldn't help but giggle at Beth's words. My husband's face turned bright red, perhaps embarrassed, but I was no longer afraid of this man. I'm sure you're going to have a tough time soon with your former subordinate becoming your boss and your personal life being taken care of by your selfish mother. I'll be able to live a peaceful life with my beautiful daughter. Of course, I won't let my illness get the better of me. Suck on that. And from Beth, my daughter, you may be my father, but I don't consider you one. You treated my mom like a slave. You won't even help me when my grandma says horrible things about me, and I don't want a father like that, and I don't want to see you anymore. With a triumphant look on my face, I left the house with Beth. In the cab, I tell Beth, I'm sorry, Beth. I know I'm going to cause you a lot of trouble. Beth looked at me with a puzzled look on her face. I'm sorry? What do you mean? I'm glad you finally divorced Dad. And don't worry about our life. I make a lot of money. I'm an adult now. Thank you for relying on me, Mom. I couldn't stop crying at the words of my daughter, who had grown up to be a fine woman before I knew it. After that, my husband and I got divorced. My ex-husband kept trying to get me to stay with him, but there was no way that was happening. Because of the way he had treated me, I was awarded alimony for the emotional pain and the division of property in my favor. What happened to my ex-husband after that was worse than I could have imagined. He was taking care of my ex-mother-in-law with dementia while working, but he gave up after only a week and tried to get his sister to do it. Heather tried to put Lauren in a facility, but she was told that there was a long waiting list, a year at the earliest. My ex-mother-in-law would walk out of the house and take store merchandise out of the store, and my ex-husband said the store has called him at work numerous times. William began to make more mistakes because he's not sleeping enough, and his former subordinate has been promoted for supervisor, and he was finally offered to work shorter hours. His income has dropped considerably, and he started living together at his sister's house, but you can hear their bickering every day from the house. One of the neighbors contacted Heather, and it seems that the siblings are now taking care of their own parents even though they don't want to. But it's my ex-mother-in-law, so it's not going to be easy. But I hope they have a hard time. It's none of my business anymore. June, the managing director, told me everything. I moved in with my daughter after that. I finished the rest of my treatment, and now I'm under observation with regular checkups, and I've lost a lot of my energy, so I'm taking time off to do housework and light exercise. I hope to be able to go back to work when things settle down. Recently, I received a call from my ex-husband, whom I have blocked from receiving calls, with a blocked number.
Michaela, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time every day and I'm sick with the flu. Please, help me.
To this sick, middle-aged man who is sobbing on the phone, I said, I see. So as they say, sickness comes from the mind, so why don't you just pour water over your head and try to fix it with your guts? If you want me to cure cancer with my guts, you can do this much, right? Oh, if you call me again, I'll go to the police. I hung up the phone coldly, and the next day I changed my phone number. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I thought I would never be able to see the day my daughter gets married, but the other day Beth said a little shyly, "Mom, there is someone I'd like you to meet." Apparently, my dream may be coming true in the near future. So my new dream is to hold my grandchild in my arms. My second life has just begun, and I will not be defeated by illness. With this in mind, I will continue to live strongly, one day at a time.